right, I think we're getting started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today again at our ethics training for Form 700 filers. My name is Vivian Poe. I serve as the Director of Central Office and Engagement in the City Administrator's Office, but also serving as your MC for today's training. Before we started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items with you. First of all, the meeting today will be recorded. We would like to make sure that people who may not be able to join us today would be able to watch this video and also receive the information that they may need. Second, for those who need closed caption, there is a way to do it. All you need to do is select the three dots under with more under it on the top right-hand corner or top ribbon of your Teams. And then you can go ahead and select language and speech. And then you can also turn on the live caption there. All right, quickly for today, we have a long agenda, but a lot of really useful information for you. Let's have just a quick overview of today's meeting. We'll have a brief opening remarks from our City Administrator, Carmen Chiu. Then we'll hear from our main speaker today, Anna Flores, Deputy City Attorney on Ethics and Elections team from the City Attorney's Office. She'll be focusing on things that we need to disclose and be mindful of as a Form 700 filers. It is also important to note that there are ethics rules apply to all city employees, not just Form 700 filers, such as statement of incompatible activities, use of city resources, political activities. We'll cover them all briefly at the end, but we'll follow up with an email with additional resources. You can also rewatch a recording of the ethics training that we did back in May for all staff, and we have covered those topics quite extensively, along with additional employment. So we have a lot to cover today. Without further delay, I'm going to ask our City Administrator, Carmen Chiu, for some quick opening remarks. Hi,
Thank
Carmen.
Hi, Vivian. Good morning, everybody. I'm Carmen Chu, City Administrator. I hope you are all doing well and that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving break and, of course, are looking forward to the upcoming holiday. I also want to take a moment, since I have a few of you on this call, to say happy holidays to all of you and wishing all of you a wonderful, wonderful season ahead. I did want to stop by just to briefly introduce the item. I think, as you know, Vivian and the team has been working very hard alongside with our city attorney to pull together some training and resource materials for city administrator staff. I think for some of you, filing a Form 700 is not new. However, for some of you, it may be a new thing that you've been doing. I will say, for anyone who hasn't done it before, it does get easier. The first time you do it, you might have a lot of questions about what the form requires you to report. There might be a lot of questions that you might ask for advice to make sure that you're disclosing the right information. But once you do have it, you'll find that unless there's some significant changes that happen in your life, the Form 700 filing becomes very simple. I think one of the things just to keep in mind is that the Form 700 serves as a reminder for us about the things that we have financial interest in. That really helps us to understand in what instances, if we're taking an action and some of those entities are involved, whether it's a physical location that you own or if it's another business that you have, that you know that you're considering all of those things when making your decisions. I think the bottom line is that as we're going forward as city employees, we have a responsibility and a duty to be thinking about some of these conflicts and to make sure that we're not inadvertently stepping into an instance where you might be conflicted because of your own personal owning assets or other interests. One of the things that we know is over the last several years, there's been a lot of attention paid to city ethics. This is something, however, Form 700 filing has been something that we have had to do for a very long time. The one thing that we wanted to also share, and the reason why we think that this update and this training is really helpful, is that over the course of the last few years, there's also been many new changes that have occurred with regards to gifts and other things, acceptance of tickets, et cetera, that we also want to make sure that you are aware that there are constantly kind of evaluation of what our ethics rules are, and we want to make sure that we keep you as updated as possible. So I think overall, just know that while it might be hard the first time around, kind of going through it and asking all the questions that you do have, just make sure that you're keeping notes of all of the advice that you get, making sure that you have the information you need to file your Form 700. And again, it will get easier every year. We just want you to know that it's a good way to keep thinking about all of the decisions that you make on behalf of the public's interest, and make sure that you remove yourself from any instance where it might actually look like you have a conflictual relationship. So again, just want to thank you in advance for taking it seriously, because I think we really want to make sure that we're continuing to build the city's trust, the public's trust in all of our operations. And every one of you have a very strong role in making sure that that happens. So again, I will turn it over to Vivian. I want to thank her again and her team for pulling this together. I know it's not easy, and feel free to ask as many questions as we have time for. And if you've got more questions, just always know, even if it's not today, that we do have resources to help you get to the answer, so that you are filling out your forms correctly and that you know what the spirit of the law is trying to accomplish. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Vivian. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Carmen, for being here with us today. And yes, as Carmen said, if you have questions, please ask them. You can type them in the chat, and then we'll have some Q&A time at the end of the training. And if we don't get to all of it, we'll also get back to you in another time. So thank you for your participation again. So now we would like to introduce our speaker today. As I mentioned, Deputy City Attorney Anna Flores. She has served as Deputy City Attorney on the Ethics and Elections team. Anna has spent her whole career in public interest law, working for different nonprofits and local governments. She graduated from UC Santa Cruz and received her JD from UC University of California College of Law, San Francisco. So thank you so much, Anna, for being here and also spending the time working with me preparing for this training. I'll hand the mic to you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I just want to thank the city administrator for having this and just making this an important part of running the office. So hopefully I don't bore you today. Next slide, please. So we're going to, as Vivian mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about several topics. The first topic that we're going to cover is a Form 700. So for those who don't know, and for those who are new, just a Form 700 is an annual filing of your personal financial interests. It is a public document. Anybody can go on the ethics website and download your Form 700 to see what your financial interests are. And the purpose is just really so that the public knows your financial interests, and basically that they can confirm that you're not participating in governmental decisions that are a conflict of interest for you. So that's why it's important to be really transparent and disclose everything that you are required to disclose. If ever you make a mistake, you can always amend your form. There's no penalty for amending your form. There is a penalty for not filing your form, but you know, if within the last 7 years you've made a mistake, after this training, you can go back and amend those forms. Next slide, please. So the folks who need to file a Form 700 are anyone who's listed in the department's conflict of interest code. And if you've been invited to this meeting, I think there's an assumption that you are in the conflict of interest code because you're getting this Form 700 training. But if you're maybe thinking, oh, I don't think I am, you can reach out to your supervisors and discuss whether or not this is applicable to you. You should have filed within 30 days of when you started your job, and you file every year annually sometimes April 1st falls on a weekday, so we file on April 1st, but if April 1st falls on weekends, it usually goes to the next business day. And then once you leave city service, you have to file within 30 days after you leave city service. Next slide, please. And so we're just going to briefly discuss the categories, the filing categories. And this is a very brief training. I'm not going to cover 100% of everything. We just wanted to make it available to you. But we also want you to know that we are here for you in case you have any questions after the trainings, or in case we haven't answered something. This is just supposed to be like a overview, so I don't want you to think that everything that's coming out of my mouth is 100% what you need to know. If you have questions, please reach out. That's the overall theme of today. If you have questions, don't be afraid to reach out. So a lot of folks are Category 1 filers, and these people must disclose income, including gifts from any source, interest in real property, investments, and all business positions which you're a director, officer, partner, trustee, employee, or hold any position of management. And income does include your community property interest in your spouse's income, unless they work for a government agency. Government agency salaries are not financial interest. Like my husband works for the county of Alameda, so I don't have to disclose his income. And then generally gifts are received from family members and friends, are not reportable, but like I said, when in doubt, contact our city attorney. And usually you only have to disclose properties that you rent in San Francisco or within 2 miles of San Francisco, but you don't have to disclose your personal residence. And investments do not include 457 plans or ETFs or government backed plans. But there's a lot of nuances within each disclosure category and within each disclosable interest. So please contact us if you have a question about whether something should go on the form or not. Next slide, please. So there are 4 categories at the city administrator's office. Category number 2 and 3 are kind of similar, but for categories 2 and 3, you have to disclose the same thing, except it depends on where you work. So folks that are category 2 should disclose investments and business positions in business entities and income from any source, which provides or contracts with the city administrators or the Office of Contracts, or have done so in the last 2 years. And category 3 is similar, but it also includes other folks who are in other divisions who may also have business with those contractors. So again, this is just a little rewritten way, but if you have questions, it's all in your code. Next slide, please. Category 4 is usually PropQ filers. So if you're, PropQ employees. So if you're a PropQ employee, you know that you fall into this category. Next slide, please. So the reason why we discuss the Form 700 is because the Form 700 is a useful tool to determine when you have a conflict of interest. So a conflict of interest exists if you are voting on a matter, making an appointment, entering into a contract on behalf of the agency, or otherwise obligating your department to take a course of action that affects your financial interests described in Form 700. If you have a conflict in one of those financial interests and a decision you're making, you must abstain from any participation or efforts to influence a decision. And, oftentimes, if you don't, like, the consequences could be that you get a ethics commission complaint filed against you, and you could pay thousands of dollars in fines and fees. And so we're just, part of giving you the training is because we want you to avoid that. We want you to know that, we're here to discuss any questions you may have. And it's always useful to contact us as soon as possible, as soon as you know that you might have a conflict of interest, so that we could stop and analyze and then tell you how to proceed. Next slide, please. All right, we're going to do our first quiz question.
Right. And then I'll read those out, and then Anna will be answering our questions along the way. So quiz question number 1. I am a city employee who is required to file a Form 700 in Category 1. My husband and I own our home in San Francisco and a rental property in Oakland. My husband runs an online business with his partners, and they have clients all over the Bay Area, including our city, San Francisco. We also buy and sell stocks, bonds, mutual funds on the side. So what do I need to disclose on my Form 700? Which of the following is true? Let's see.
So hopefully everyone got this right, or will have gotten it right after my first few slides. So here's the answers. So do you need to disclose all properties you own in San Francisco because you live? No, false. So the only properties you have to disclose, again, are rental properties that you receive income from within San Francisco, You don't have to disclose your residence. Next slide, please. Do you need to disclose your personal residence in San Francisco? No, right? But you must disclose the rental income from the property in Oakland because it is income. So it's not on the same, the disclosure happens on these things called schedules. So one schedule is for personal property, or sorry, real property. That's where you disclose houses, and that's where you can disclose anything within your jurisdiction. There's another schedule for income, and so that's where you would disclose this. Next slide. Sorry, next question. Do you need to disclose your community property interest in your husband's business? Yes. And there's another schedule that you disclose that. And then do you need to disclose every single stock, bond, mutual fund my husband and I own, even if we use separate accounts to invest? Answer is false. No. So some bonds and some mutual funds, like I said, are not disclosable because of the way the FPPC has decided. So it's usually any stock that you own $2,000 or more that you control buying and purchasing of. So that wouldn't include a 457 plan, or that wouldn't include something similar to 401k, where you choose middle, high, or even higher investing. And you don't get a say into what you're investing. So, and this is all very brief. So like I said, contact me or our team if you have any questions. Next, we're going to move on to gifts. A gift is anything of value for which you do not provide something of equal or greater value in return. And this can include a meal at a restaurant, flowers, airline tickets, or a game to watch the Giants. Some tickets to watch Giants. Next slide, please. So as Form 700s filers, you do have some gift rules that you must be aware of every year. So you can accept up to $590 annually in gifts from a single source. And you must report all gifts worth $50 or more, or a series of gifts totaling $50 or more from sources in your disclosure category. And this applies to gifts, like I said, from sources in your disclosure category. And there are a bunch of exceptions. So when in doubt whether to accept a gift, it's always important just to contact us. Like there's an exception for informational materials for going to conferences, free or discounted entrance into a conference when the conference is used to help you in your duties. That's also not a gift. So, there are various exceptions. The key is to contact us if you have questions. Next slide. So the other topic is payments for travel are also gifts. So generally any payment or reimbursement for transportation, lodging, and the food is subject to the $590 gift limit. However, there are certain payments for travel that are not considered gifts, and there are certain payments of travel that are gifts but not subject to the limits. So the payments for travel that are not gifts are when they're paid for by a government agency for education, training, or interagency programs, and when it's a reimbursement for travel by a government agency or a 501c3 for which you provide equal or greater consideration. And this is usually when someone's like on the board of an organization of a 501c3 and they're paying for them to go to a conference or their annual board meeting, and the equal consideration is you're a board member and you're volunteering. So the next set of payments are gifts and are reportable. So that means you must disclose them on your Form 700, but you can accept more than $590 every year. So this includes domestic travel made in connection with the speech or presentation. And then also includes domestic or international travel paid for by a government agency, a foreign government, an educational institution, or a 501c3 nonprofit if the travel is reasonably related to a governmental purpose. So that includes like if you get, if Harvard is having a training where they are talking about something related to your job, and Harvard's like, we'll pay for you to come and join us in this training because we think that, this relates to your job duties. That's reasonably related to a governmental purpose. Governmental purpose encompasses a lot of things. So, when in doubt, just contact us. But for the most part, these types of travel payments are not going to be subject to the gift limit, but you still must report them. And the reason why you must report them is because then they become your financial interest that you must watch out for. So if you accept something from Harvard, then you later can't make decisions about Harvard because they are in your financial interest disclosures. Next slide, please. There are certain gifts that you cannot accept. Don't be too sad, because there are exceptions are coming. So the gifts from subordinates. So anyone that you supervise or who are applying to work for you, you can't accept anything from them. You can't accept gifts for doing your job in the regular course of your employment. And you also can't accept gifts from restricted sources. Anyone who is contracting or seeking to contract with your department, or anyone who has attempted to influence you in any legislative or administrative action in the previous 12 months. Those are restricted sources to you, and you cannot accept the gift. Next slide, please. But like I said, there are exceptions. So from subordinates, you can't accept. Everyone's like, well, what about Christmas? So this is the exception. Voluntary gifts given or received for special occasions, or when gifts are traditionally given or exchanged with a value of $25 or less. So if you already bought your supervisor a gift that's $20 for the holidays, don't return it. Give it to them, because that is an exception. You can also accept a gift for personal hospitality. You can also accept food or drink of any value to be shared in the office from subordinates. Next slide, please. And there are exceptions for restricted sources or for doing your job. You can accept up to 4 times a year a non-cash gift worth $25 or less, or if it is a gift of food or drink to be shared in the office, like holiday baskets. If a restricted source sends you this, or if just a person who is really happy for the service you provided sends you this to the office, you can accept it, irrespective of any value. You can accept it to share in the office. But like always, we always say, even if these gifts are allowed, you perform a gut check. Will the public think that this is appropriate? Now, if your gut check tells you no, then unfortunately, probably the right thing to do is to return it. Even though it's allowed and you won't necessarily be violating the rules, the gut check is always something that we as public employees must have at the forefront of any gifts that we receive. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about tickets and passes distributed by city departments. And this could be things like outside lands or the ballet, or, there's a concert and departments are giving free tickets. So these are presumed to be gifts unless it's distributed under your department's ticket policy and it fulfills a public purpose. And so 2 things must happen in order for this. The department must report the tickets, you getting the ticket on FPPC Form 802. And that means that you do not have to report it on your Form 700. And your department has just recently issued your own ticket policy. So again, you don't get to make the determination if a ticket is, or I guess there are some managers in this training. So I guess some people will make the determination if tickets distributed are a public purpose, but for the most part, if you're receiving a ticket, someone has already made that determination, and you can confirm with them that they're going to report it on the Form 802. The other way that could not be a gift is if you pay for the ticket or if you report it as income on your taxes. Next slide, please.
We're now getting into quiz question 2. So thank you, Anna, for bringing up the ticket policy, because it is relatively new in our department, and it would be the division directors or deputies deciding if those tickets will be accepted as an office for public purpose. And if they are distributed to you as a staff, then that means your division would have reported them already, and you do not need to report on your Form 700. So more details will be coming to divisions that actually usually would have tickets acceptance for their job responsibility. So we'll contact you, Sophie and I will contact you for a follow-up meeting to go through that process with you. But anyway, I do see people putting hands up. So we are accepting questions in the chat at the moment, and then we'll have a Q&A portion at the end to answer those questions. So for the moment, if you wouldn't mind just putting your questions into the chat, that would be great. We'll keep track of them. So now quiz question 2. A community partner wants to thank you and your team for your support on their grant application and sends over a box of chocolates and 2 complimentary tickets to their annual gala. That costs $30 each. Even though the community partner was not selected to receive the grant at the end, which of the following is true? So
All
answer
right. So
one.
let's see
Yeah.
who got these right. So you can accept the chocolates because it is a food to be shared in the office, but you cannot accept the tickets because they are more than $25 from a restricted source. If you got this right, you're correct. So again, any amount of food or drink to share in the office is okay. But again, $25 is the max. So, $30 ticket is above the max. Next slide, please. You cannot accept any gifts because accepting might make the community partner assume you will do special favors for them in the future. That's self-explanatory. Next slide or next. You can accept the gifts from the community partner because he was not selected as a grantee and therefore not a restricted source. So false, because remember, restricted source is anyone who has tried to contract with us. So applying for a grant is trying to contract with us, right? So they're still a restricted source. You can accept the food and tickets, but you must disclose them on your Form 700. So everyone should have gotten this one right. So that's false. Again, so because they're a restricted source, you cannot accept the tickets. But you can accept the food and drink and to be shared in the office. That's, if it came to the office, it's not technically your gift. And again, if these are further things that actually we didn't put in this training, but if the what you receive is $100 or more, the department has to disclose it online, but that's a conversation for another day that we
So
can
if
have
it's
with
like a
someone
very
else.
expensive box of
Yes.
chocolates, then that would be a problem. Got
Yeah.
it. All right.
Don't ever
Okay.
feel afraid to return these things. The city attorney often returns a lot of things because we just don't want to report it or, get into the minutia of what to do with it. So to avoid these gift rules, you can do three things. You can favor the gift. So if you wanted to go to that gala that the grantee wanted to send you to, you can pay the $30 and go. You can also donate the ticket. Of course, in that situation, you can't donate the ticket because it's more than $25 from a restricted source. But let's say the ticket was not from a restricted source and it was $50 and you would have to report it. However, you didn't want it, so you just donated to a nonprofit. But again, you're not taking a tax deduction. You're not being thanked for it. You're just like, here's something I got that I can't accept. You can also return the gift within 30 days of when you receive the gift. Next slide, please. Now, there is another type of financial conflict of interest, and it's under Government Code Section 1090. And this, unlike the Form 700 violations that you only get a penalty, like a financial penalty from the Ethics Commission, 1090 violation may lead to criminal consequences, meaning like the DA files charges against you. You can Google SF controversies in the last few years, and you'll see that these are real world consequences that folks are facing. And so we don't want you to be in that camp, and that's why we're giving you this training. So all employees are prohibited from entering into or participating in making contracts in which they have a financial interest. So financial interests for purposes of government section 1090 are a little different. So than the Form 700. So you have a financial interest if you might profit from it in any way. You also have a financial interest, even if it's not direct, it could be indirect. And it could also involve financial losses or the possibility of losses, as well as the prospect of gain, of pecuniary gain, of money gain. So it's a very broad topic. So if you're involved in making contracts, make sure that you're not making decisions on contracts where you might profit in some way. And your participation is defined broadly. You can read what all those encompass. And I know that the city administrator's office has recently come out with their own, or will be coming out with their own policies on rules regarding contracting. So you should expect that soon. But I think the big takeaway from this, and we don't want to scare you by telling you there's criminal consequences, but the big takeaway is that if you have a conflict or if you think you have a conflict, don't play any role in the contracting process. Next slide, please. All right, quiz question 3.
Yeah, I am a city employee and my wife volunteers as an unpaid board member at a local nonprofit. Recently, I was informed by my wife that the community nonprofit is interested in applying for city grants and would like to ask me about general city contracting processes. Meanwhile, I was invited by another department to sit on a scoring panel for a grant that I think the nonprofit might be interested in applying. I have no involvement with the nonprofit and never attend their activities. Which of the following is true? All right, Anna, we'll go into the
Let's
questions. Yep,
Yeah. So I'm
let's
sure this
see.
was a hard one for a lot of people because there are different moving parts here, right? So you can let your wife know about the upcoming grant opportunity and point her to the application website. That is true. There's no prohibition on doing that for anyone. You can give your wife general information about city contracting. That is true. That would just be like helping anybody from the public, right? Next slide, or sorry, next question. If the nonprofit ends up applying and qualifies for the selection process, you disclose your relationship with the nonprofit via email or memo to the project manager, but you are not required to recuse from the panel. This one was true. So again, this is a little where the nuances kind of matter, because remember, your wife is an unpaid volunteer, so you don't have a financial interest in the stake of this organization. They're not receiving income from this organization, so it wouldn't have anything to do with your community property interest in your wife's income, because she's unpaid. She's a volunteer board member. So you you probably should recuse just because it doesn't look good, but do you have an actual financial conflict of interest? No. And then once you disclose your relationship to the nonprofit, you can share specific details and tips about the grant with the nonprofit. False. So remember, just because you disclose your relationship, that doesn't mean it's like open season for all the tricks on how to get the grant. That would be selective assistance, which is prohibited under your SIA. So next slide. So now we're going to move on to something called the behested payments. And this is a very brief overview. So I want you just to keep that in the back of your mind, because you're going to have tons of questions. We're not going to answer them today. And I just want you to know that this even stomps attorneys. So I don't want you to think like there's something wrong with you. This is a very convoluted piece of legislation that has a lot of moving parts. So a behested payment is made at the behest of anyone that is covered under this, and is made principally for a legislative, governmental, or charitable purpose. Generally, it's like donations to the city or to nonprofits on your behalf that you're asking for. And it applies to all Form 700 filers. And the ordinance says that you can't solicit, so like ask of, any payments from interested parties. So the analysis focuses on who you're asking. But this doesn't prohibit from donating to an interested party. So you can donate to whoever you want. And it also doesn't prohibit accepting any unsolicited grant or donation from an interested party. Next slide, please. So who is an interested party? There's a whole line of definitions that I'm not going to go through in the interest of time, but that you can go through. And if you have questions, contact us. But for the most part, it includes a lot of people that contract with the city administrator's office, that have contracts, that have licenses or some enforcement or permit or other something in front of you that you're involved in. It also includes registered lobbyists for your department, permit consultants. So it includes a whole bunch of people. So again, the legislation focuses on who you're asking. Next slide, please. Who is not an interested party. So this includes federal and state government and likely local governments. An individual, just because that individual is an uncompensated board member of a nonprofit, that is an interested party. And then for contractors, that doesn't include people that provide a grant to us. So like, let's say Tipping Point was providing a grant to us, they wouldn't be an interested party because of them providing a grant. They could be an interested party because maybe they tried to sway you in a governmental decision, which is another prong. But for just the purposes of providing a grant for us doesn't make them an interested party. And also, if someone's in front of you or your department for like a permit or a license, if the permit or license is something ministerial, then that's also not an interested party. Ministerial is just basically like a rubber stamp on like something that is going to be done that has no discretion. Next slide, please. So the following types of, despite what the rules are, the following types of solicitations are exempt. So meaning you can make these solicitations. So even to interested parties, you can ask them for $1,000 or less per year. So anyone that would fall under that interested party prong, you can still ask them for $1,000 or less. You can do so in a public appeal, through television, radio, as long as it reaches 200 more people or 20 or more people in a room. And you can read the rest of the included types of exceptions, but those are generally the most common. Next slide, please. All right, so now we're on quiz question 4.
Yes, I am a city employee who is required to file Form 700. I also serve as the president of the Parent Teacher Association, PTA, at my kids' school, and I am responsible for raising money for the school every year. The PTA fundraises from donors who include parents, community members, and businesses near the school. I don't know what donors do for a living. They might be lobbyists, city workers, developers, and others. Each donor usually gives $50 to $5,000 every year to the school. So which of the following is true?
So this is probably another question that is difficult because it, like I said, the behest payment is difficult. So the first one, as long as I solicit donations by sending the same donation request email to 200 or more people or ask for a donation at a gathering of 20 or more people, that is not considered a behested payment request. If you said that was true, you're correct.
Yay.
Again, it's the public appeal, remember. And the second, I can ask one of the parents who owns a construction company to donate $1,500 to help remodel the playground, although he is applying for a permit from my department, which I am reviewing. If you got that one false, that is correct. Remember, you are personally reviewing this permit, so that means that it's not ministerial, that you have some discretion, and also you're asking them for $1,500. If you had asked them for $1,000, that would be okay under the rules, but $1,500 is over the yearly limit, where you can ask for a behested payment. Next slide, or sorry, next. So without being asked, a parent who applied for a facility rental permit for my department wants to donate food to support PTA meetings and activities. I can accept the food because I did not solicit payment. If you got that true, that is correct. Again, unsolicited donations, you can accept them because, again, the behested payment rule is you are asking for something. If you did not ask for something, if this person just knows that the PTA fundraises and it's just out of the kindness of their heart sends the donation, that's unsolicited, you can accept. And then also there's a little nuance where this might have been a ministerial permit, right? Because it's before the department. So ministerial permits are also technically does not qualify someone as an interested party. So next slide, please. So now we're going to shift gears and go into the statement of incompatible activities. It's a lot of writing, and in the interest of time, we're not going to read all of it. But just so you are aware that the statement of incompatible activities applies to your entire department, and every department has an SIA. I'm going to just 2 seconds for you to briefly read that. All right,
And we
next
will
slide.
be sending it out at
Yes.
after the meeting as well, so you can read it more closely as well.
Next slide. So, and then the SIA also contains further restrictions that apply to certain divisions within the city administrator's office. So if you are an employee in one of these divisions, I highly, highly recommend that you review the further restrictions to make sure that you're complying with the restrictions. And if you're not, or if there's an issue, then you should request an advance written determination, which is what's written there. An advance written determination is just basically like you're intending to do an activity that's against your SIA, but you're submitting it to your department to review and approve. Next slide. So again, further SIA rules, you can't misuse city resources. You can't use city resources for political activities. You also can't solicit campaign donations from other city employees. You can't use your letterhead, your business, your email, anything for personal purposes. That means like if you park outside and There's an MTA little ticket person going around, can't go outside and say, hey, don't ticket me, I work for city administrators. Like that would be highly inappropriate and a misuse of your city title. And again, and then the one thing that is kind of hidden in there is that you can't make or participate in making or seek to influence an employment action involving a relative. That means being a reference for a relative for your department. That's not allowed. For other departments, you can be a reference, just not your own department. Next slide, please. And there are some considerations for future employment. So if you ever, I know some of us are lifers, like we're going to be here for the rest of our life, but for the rest of us, we want to find other jobs. You should remember that there are some rules. So you can't work for or receive compensation from a person or entity that entered into a contract with the city within the previous 12 months if you personally and substantially participated in the contract or award. And you also can't make or participate in making or seek to influence a government decision affecting an entity for which you are discussing or negotiating future employment. So, if you're involved in grant making, and I keep using the same nonprofit, but let's say, what's that? Let's say, I don't know, one of the big nonprofits in the city, you're in charge of one of the grants. And they're like, hey, do you want to work for us? That would not be okay because you are overseeing their grant. So you can't influence or seek to influence the decision on the city side and also negotiate future employment. So those things are not allowed. And violation of these things, could lead to an ethics commission's complaint. And again, that carries fines and fees. Next slide, please. And then further considerations, if you're involved in something on this side with the city, you can't then leave the city and switch sides and go work for that other entity that, like, let's say you're overseeing this grant with Tipping Point, and then you leave the city and then you go work for Tipping Point on the grant side. That's not allowed as long as you personally and substantially participated and the parties are the same. And also you can't, after you leave your department, you can't communicate for 1 year after your city employment with your department with the intent to influence a government decision. So again, you can contact your department, you can contact your old former coworker and say, hi, how are you? Everything's good. But you cannot go work for another agency and contact your department and say, hey, I see that there's this grant. Can you tell me all about it? We want to apply. Like that would not be okay. That would be a violation of the post-employment rules. And for these, there is a waiver through the Ethics Commission's but it is a public process. So you would have to like parade a bunch of folks up front there to request that the commission waive this, so that you can go you can talk to the department or you can go work for someone that is prohibited. But again, it is a public process. Next slide. All right, last quiz question. There's a candidate.
Oh, go ahead. Do you want me to? Okay, there is a candidate for local office. I'll read it so Anna can take a little bit of a break. It's a long presentation for her, and we really thank her for her efforts. So there is a candidate for a local office who you believe is well qualified to lead the city in the upcoming election. You want to get your colleagues to support the candidate and want to volunteer for their campaign. Which of the following is true? All right, you can ask your colleagues to make a contribution to the candidate while at work. I hope everyone got this right.
False. Yeah.
And then you can ask your colleagues to make a contribution to the candidate while you're using your personal cell phone during non-work hours. False.
So the reason why this is false is because even though you're using your personal cell phone and you're doing it during non-work hours, the rules on political activity say that you cannot ask any city employees for a political contribution, even while on working hours, even using your own phone.
Just period at all times.
Just period, yes.
Got it. You can volunteer for their campaign as long as you do so during non-work hours and not using city resources or not on city property.
True. So you can donate your time, you can donate a political contribution, you can do all of that. The rules are just about If you're on city time, if you're using city resources, or if you're on city property, you can't advocate for or on behalf of a candidate or a measure. And you also, at all times, you can't ask other city employees for political contributions. I think that's it, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and that concludes our training. I know we packed a lot of information for you today, but as Anna mentioned at the beginning, it's an overview. Whenever you have questions, you should feel free to reach out to your deputy city attorney first, and then they will coordinate with Anna teams to get back to you on any questions that you might have. So whenever you get into situation, check your gut, and if it feels like you need to check with someone else, it's always good to do so. And the city attorney always get back to us on it. I know we didn't get through this, but in our other training, many people have questions about additional employment, and we did have a pretty extensive explanation by our HR team last time in our training. So I'll encourage you to go back and watch that video, and you can always contact them at this email address as well if you have any questions.
And that
So
training is shorter. That training was only 30 minutes. So,
Yep. You can
but
watch it during your
talk about-
lunch.
it does talk about additional employment, which is another topic that, in the interest of time, we didn't include. Should we go over some of these questions, Vivian? Or
Yes, let's
Okay.
go into Q&A, and I
So-
am looking at the questions. Let's just go with the very first one that we got. Will our personal information from the form become a public record where the public can access it? I think this is talking about the Form 700.
Yes, the form is a public record that is available on the Ethics Commission's website, and it is available for 7 years.
Got it. And then, do we know which category we are in?
You should know, but if you don't know, you should contact your supervisor.
And I should let people know that our office is going through an updating process now with the Board of Supervisors. So we are amending some of our positions and categories at the same time. So once we have a chance to go through that process with the Board of Supervisors, when we have the final, we will announce it with our department. So you would know what if your position will be disclosing at which category. But I would say most director and deputies, if you're in kind of management positions, you're likely to be category 1.
And you don't get to choose your category, like the category is chosen for you before you start. So
Okay, we got a question about personal hospitality. Yeah.
That's like when you're hosting a party, or I don't know, like let's say for some reason your supervisor spends the night at your house, like you provide them food at your house. So think of literal personal hospitality, like at your house.
Mm-hmm. The next question is interesting one. Do nonprofit exceptions apply to only charitable organizations that are 501c3, or is it also to C4 and C6?
I'll have to look at the rules. So I think that's something I can get back to that person on.
No problem. We can email them back on that.
Sounds good.
All right, and see. Let's see it. There's a question, Lorenzo.
So for restricted source, I think maybe you're referring to restricted source. So for restricted source, it's trying to contract with your department. Or has a contract with your department. It's not just like has a contract with the city. That doesn't make them a restricted source. For restricted source purposes, it's a contract with your department.
Okay, so just to reiterate, the question is trying to see, like, I guess, in contracting in general is just with the entire city, or talking about specific, and I think Anna just answered, it's your specific departments.
And again, this is for restricted source. I'm assuming this is the restricted source tied question. If it's something else, then it would change.
Sounds good. All right, I think these follow-up 2 questions can be together. So they're asking if we want to return a gift or we just want to pay for a gift, do we need to do any documentation around it?
I think that what this person did, just having a receipt that they sent it back, or an email to the organization. There's no hard and fast rules about like what constitutes evidence. But again, think about like if the Ethics Commission got wind that you got this gift and then they were like, what'd you do with this gift? Like, what could you substantiate? What could you prove was done with this gift? And I think a receipt a mailing receipt, an email, showing you sent it back. Any of that would be fine.
So good to have some documentation of where you
Yeah,
give
yeah.
or pay for it. Okay, got it. Um, Another question is about just mutual funds and stocks. Do they need to be disclosed?
So again, mutual funds under the rule, so you're not required to disclose government funds, diversified mutual funds, certain funds similar to diversified mutual funds, such as ETFs and investments held in certain retirement accounts. Those you don't need to disclose.
And that would include index funds too, right? We got earlier questions about that. Okay, great.
So annuities, commodities, what you should report is stocks, bonds, warrants, and options, including those held in margin or brokerage accounts and managed investment funds, and any kind of like interest in a business, any investment in that.
Got it. We have a question about properties. So if you have family members that own rental properties in San Francisco and you put and you will be put in their living trust, do you need to report this type of information given that the family members are not partner or spouse?
Yes, so anytime you're a beneficiary of a trust, you need to, this sounds like the person should contact us just to make sure, but just generally, yes, when you're a beneficiary of a trust that is um, getting income or has properties, then and especially if these properties are located in San Francisco,
Got
you
it.
have to report it.
Thank you. Any guiding principles in situation where a ticketed event, for example, $300, invite city rep to be on a panelist for to provide the tickets. Let me see if I'm reading it right. Oh, to be a panelist for that event and provides a ticket for entry for that purpose.
Yeah, so like I said, there are several like exceptions to the rule. And so tickets to an event where you're performing a ceremonial role, like all that would be okay. Or tickets to an event where, like I said, is for informational purposes. And tickets to, I'm going through the list here. There's a lot of them. Tickets to fundraisers for 501c3. When you're invited to a fundraiser by the 501c3 who's hosting the event, you can accept that, and that is not a gift. But if you're invited to a fundraiser by anyone else who is not the 501c3 throwing the fundraiser, then that is not within the exceptions. So it would be a gift. So yeah, usually when you're being asked to give like a presentation, those would fall under the travel rules. When you're invited to give a speech, that so that would not fall under the gift rules, because you're essentially, they're paying you to go give the speech, right, or to be on the panel. Sorry. I will say that honorariums, when people are paying you to go give a speech, that is not allowed. You cannot accept an honorarium.
Thank you, Anna. That's great to know. We have a next question about a second job, freelance tutoring. I would encourage you to contact our HR office on that one. And then,
Yes. So just briefly though, for income, if you're receiving income, like whatever the HR side of that is for secondary employment, the reporting side of that, if you receive any income, and within your reportable interest, of $500 or more a year, then you would have to report it.
got it. And then we have a follow-up similar questions about volunteering work. So if it's work that you're not being paid, you're just volunteering, do you need to disclose? I think
Um,
I can
so
check with our
yeah,
HR.
for
Yeah.
purposes of like the Form 700, no. But for purposes of your SIA, like if you're within what your SIA allows you to do, then, that's another different question.
Feel free to check with our HR on that. can you solicit a donation from a party that is applying for a permit, grant, on contract in the department if you are not at all involved in the selection process?
So again, you can solicit $1,000 or less from anyone who is an interested party. And if you're not involved in this permanent grant contract, but this it would be a different consideration. But just remember, I just want you to remember the small amount exception, which is $1,000 or less.
Got it. Okay, let's see. Donations from a union you're part of. Guess you're trying to see if you can ask for donations from a union that you're part of.
So that would depend. That would depend if the union falls within those interested party categories. I don't know if a union would fall under those interested party categories. But if you've read the definition and the union doesn't fall under those interested party categories, there is no rules about asking for donations from them.
Okay, we have a question about spouse/domestic partner status. Would that include a married longtime partner? Or it has to be like a registered domestic partner?
Yes, it has to be a registered domestic partner or husband or wife or,
Married spouse.
Yeah, married, like legal marriage. Or domestic partnership, which is legally registered.
Great. And then I think going back to about solicitation, I think this is like, do we mean that city administrator as a department, or is it each division is its own kind of entity?
So for restricted source and for interested party, it would be department and whatever division your department falls under. You guys are kind of in a unique situation because there's a lot of divisions within the department, but the umbrella of it is the city administrator, right? So the city administrator would be the department.
Got it. And I guess because we're just so unique, I think it would be better if we can take like a individual situation to the city attorney and ask those questions. And then we have a question, let's see, if you and your spouse have a rental property outside of San Francisco and use a property management company, do you need to disclose their info?
Yeah, so for generally whatever income you're getting, you would disclose the property management company as the person that you're getting the income from. Actually, no, I let me circle back on that question because I actually reached out to the Ethics Commission about this question. So we'll have a harder rule for you, but for now, we're always in the business of over disclosing. Because if you don't disclose and then you have to disclose, you basically have to amend your form. So it just becomes, it's a little confusing. So I will definitely get back to that person on this question about non-SF properties and their rentals.
And using a property management.
Yeah.
And then we plan to compile some kind of a FAQ afterwards too, after seeing all the questions. So we would be able to kind of share what Anna comes back to us, and then we'll put it in there as well. Do you need to disclose employment information for your children, or is it just spouse or registered domestic partners? I guess if your child.
So I think for the Form 700, for the Form 700, it's just your immediate family, and your immediate family includes children under 18 and your spouse. So I'm unclear about this question. I don't know what that specifically refers to, but I'm guessing that they were referring to the Form 700.
They were saying employment information.
So I don't think so, because you're not, but there are circumstances when, like, let's say you live in a duplex in San Francisco and the downstairs person is a family member, you're getting income from them, right? You're getting rental income. So you would have to disclose them on your Form 700 because they're a financial interest. So let's say that the downstairs neighbor is your cousin and he's and they're paying you rental income, and then your cousin wants to apply for a permit at your department. And so because you're disclosing your cousin's rental income on your Form 700, and let's say that cousin is a reportable interest to you, so then you know that you can't have anything to do with your cousin's application because that's a financial interest to you. And making governmental decisions regarding a financial interest would be a violation of the rules.
Got it. And I think that person just clarified that their children is over 18 years old. So that was just, I think that's not considered immediate family members.
That's not immediate family member, but depending on what the disclosure category is and depending on what they're referring to, their children may be considered a financial interest to them in the income if the children are paying them income. Like let's say they're living together.
Right.
So it's more fact specific. So I definitely like if there are governmental decisions or if there are questions on if you should report it or not, like that's something that should come to our office.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And then we have a question about what if 501c3 contracts with your department and I'm losing a little context here. If this person can provide a little bit more, that would be great. And I'm guessing it might be behested payment or yeah. Okay. Well, if you can come back and give us a little bit more additional details, that would be great. For travel of an employee that is paid by the contractor to do inspections on another state, I think in another state, does that need to be reported on Form 700?
I would need more information about this in order to actually make a determination. But for the most part, contracted benefit, like if you're in a contract and part of those contracted benefits of what we're doing and what they're doing includes some kind of inspection work, that's not a gift. That's just under the contracted benefits. So, but I don't, this in another state thing is throwing me off.
Okay, got it. Well, if you can, again, contact us separately to let us know more about the details, that would be great. Yep. Another question about 501c6, I guess we'll just put that onto our FAQs and get back to you on it. Another question about getting reimbursed due to public service loan payments for forgiveness program. Do you need to disclose that?
No.
So reimbursement through loan payment forgiveness does not need to be disclosed.
No, because theoretically, when would the federal government ever like, like salaries that we get from governments, they're not considered financial interest. So any type of benefit that you're getting like SSI or any kind of benefit that you're getting from a government is not a financial interest.
Okay, got it. And then we are hopping back to that question about 501c3 contracts with your department. It's talking about tickets to a fundraising event. So are you able to accept tickets to a fundraising event if those tickets are coming from a 501c3 that contracts with your department?
Yeah, so let's say like in the restricted source example where the tickets were $30, right? There are all the statewide gift exceptions apply to restricted sources. So if there's a statewide gift exception that applies, then you can accept something even if it's from a restricted source. So in this situation, it would be a 501c3 that is throwing a fundraiser and the 501c3 is giving you the ticket. So that is an actual exception under state law, and that would not be considered a gift. Even if the ticket was like $3,000, which, that's a crazy amount for a 501c3, but even if the ticket was a crazy amount, if the 501c3 is directly giving you the ticket, then it's a fundraising gala or party, then that would not be a gift. And you can accept it even if this party was a restricted source.
Wow, thank you so much, Anna. This is a lot of nuances, and as we said again, if you have a question, please raise it because they can be highly individualized on the situation. So please consult your deputy city attorney. I think we're good with all the questions. I think someone talked about like the quiz as in the chat. So if you want to take the quiz again, it is still live. You can take the quiz. I hope you get them all right after this training, and we are keeping track of attendance in this meeting through Teams attendance records. But as we mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, that we are recording this, so you can also, if you know that colleagues who can't make it today, they can watch the video afterwards, and that would consider being trained. So thank you so much for everyone for your time, and especially for Anna for your time preparing for this presentation and spending the time with
Thank
us.
you.
As mentioned, we'll send out like a thank you email afterwards with a lot of resources, and then later on when we have the video, we'll also compile like a short FAQs to get back to some of the questions that we may not be able to get to today. So thank you so much again. And if you wouldn't mind, please take a after post-event survey for us so that we know how we can do better with these trainings in the future. I'll drop the link into the chat here, but also include in our thank you email. So again, thank you so much for all your time. Any last words from you, Anna?
No, just the big takeaway is don't be afraid to reach out. I'm not gonna judge you. I'm here to help you. Even though I'm an attorney, we're all here to help each other as city employees. So please reach out if you have questions, because some of these things are a bit complicated. And sometimes I'm even confused, and I've been practicing for 10 years, so don't be afraid.
Thank you so much again. All right, I kept you long enough, everyone. Thank you so much, and happy holidays if I don't get to say that in person.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.